The first very common misconception I see people have with Van Gogh is that she's a quick exclusive servant, and she doesn't work well if you don't have Scotty. Well, on the surface it might look like it makes sense because she has a triple quick deck, but in truth, it's not really the case. Van Gogh's best support is always going to be another Van Gogh, because of her MP boosting servants with existence outside of the realm with an extra 100% crit up. So having double Van Gogh instead of having a Scotty comp means that Van Gogh can crit hard with every single card type instead of just her quick cards. Van Gogh stacking her MP together also has some additional benefits, such as stacking a passive star gen allowing all of her cards to get massive amounts of crit chances, and also stacking fear on the enemy. Fear has traditionally been a pretty bad mechanic in FGO, as it's essentially a chanced delayed stun that is spread across multiple turns, so you can't really play around it because you don't know when it's gonna proc. But having double Van Gogh spamming their MPs constantly, you can guarantee 2 to 3 stacks of fear on the enemy at all times, meaning that the enemy will almost get stunned every single turn. Van Gogh's MP also gives an attack up, and stacking that is also really powerful. So overall, having another Van Gogh support your first Van Gogh is way better than Scotty in both the offensive and defensive aspect. Van Gogh also doesn't need Scotty's 50 MP battery a lot of the times because Van Gogh has their own way to charge her MP. Van Gogh's first skill is an MP battery that scales depending on how many curse stacks she has on herself. Her second skill casts curse on the entire team, and her third skill absorbs all curse stacks onto herself. So having 2 Van Goghs means that you can cast multiple stacks of curse on your entire team, absorb all that curse onto a Van Gogh, charge that Van Gogh's MP with skill 1, and then use the second Van Gogh's skill 3 to steal all that curse onto herself and then charge her MP with her skill 1. So basically this ends up having both Van Goghs with massive MP batteries, with one of them even surpassing 100%. So the 50 MP battery on Scotty suddenly seems a little bit redundant if you're using Van Gogh as a main DPS. And finally, even if you're doing double Van Gogh single Scotty, I don't think that's that great of an idea, because you are sacrificing a major damage source. I would rather take someone more offensive, such as Dolman, who also has pretty good synergy with Van Gogh because of the fear, the curse, and both Van Goghs being chaotic evil, or just bring another foreigner who gets buffed by her MP a lot. Second misconception I see people have with Van Gogh is that Van Gogh is only good when she's paired up with other foreigners or other servants with existence outside of the realm, and she is bad as a general crit booster. Well, that is also untrue. If you take a look at Van Gogh's MP, even when she's not supporting someone with existence outside the realm, her crit damage scales from 50% to 100%, which is really powerful for a spammable effect. And Van Gogh doesn't just provide really decent crit boost, she also provides a lot of different tools that can help the crit DPS crit. She has a passive star gen that is stackable, that allows the DPS to have very high to almost guaranteed crits on every single one of his cards, and she also has a 3-turn star absorb up on her skill 3 that is targetable, meaning that the DPS would always get 100% crit chance on all of their cards. I very often use Van Gogh to support servants that are not foreigners just for that very complete package of crit support. Van Gogh also gives some attack up just as a bonus, so her numbers really doesn't fall far behind other dedicated supports. So she is absolutely a really good pull, no matter if you like to play with specifically foreigners or you just want a very good generalist crit buffer. And then finally, a third misconception I see people have of Van Gogh is that she fits really well in a curse team. Now, the most common definition of a curse team is usually teams that focus on stacking multiple stacks of curse on the enemy as well as evil curse on the enemy to boost that curse damage, and trying to take down the enemy with massive amounts of curse damage per turn. Staple servants of this kind of teams are Dolman, Bavanshi, Salome, Koyan Dark, Jacques de Molay, and some others. Basically what you want to do is you want to stack a bunch of curse on the enemy, a bunch of evil curse on the enemy, so they take a bunch of damage every single turn passively. Well, Van Gogh will ruin that plan, because of her first skill absorbing all the curse on the field to herself. That includes all the curse on the enemies, meaning that she will undo everything you strive for, basically in this kind of game plan. Not just that, Van Gogh, although having a passive that prevents her from straight up dying from curse, can sure take a lot of curse damage. And having that much curse dedicated to stacking up on the enemy, being absorbed onto herself, she is going to be reduced to 1 HP really easily. So you're not just ruining your main game plan, you're also killing Van Gogh. So this is definitely not a very good combo. A second less common definition for a curse team are teams that take advantage of effects that allow a servant to deal extra damage against targets that are cursed, such as Chiome, Summer Heiress, and once again Jacques de Molay. And I don't think I have to explain why Van Gogh is also bad in this kind of teams, because obviously Van Gogh is going to remove that curse status from the enemy, disabling this extra damage mod. So yeah, I don't know what kind of curse teams that Van Gogh is going to be good in, but in these two most general definitions, she isn't really good. She kind of goes against what you want to do in these kinds of compositions. However, that doesn't mean that Van Gogh can't take advantage of servants that can apply curse. A very common team comp is double Van Gogh Dolman, and a lot of the times you actually use Dolman's curse that is applied to the enemy for Van Gogh's MP charge. So this doesn't mean that Van Gogh doesn't combo well with curse servants, it just means that Van Gogh isn't a great pick if your whole game plan is revolved around casting curse on the enemy. So anyways, I hope this pretty short video is briefly helpful to clearing up some confusions that people have regarding Van Gogh, and helping you decide easier to whether roll for the servant or not. And I'll see you guys in the next one.